There's a big shift that we help people take in their mindset that AI isn't happening at you or to you, it is happening through you. And the through you piece paired with the focus of like, and it's not all the other stuff, it's you and ChatGPT or your relationship.
Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, where Josh, Huston, and I unpack everything at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. Today, we are going to be talking about shiny new objects. So, trigger warning, I'm probably going to be on my soapbox ranting a little bit today. So, just letting you know now. So, a little bit of context for today's podcast is that this week, a Chinese AI technology company, DeepSeek, I don't even know if that's their name, but that's the name of their product. DeepSeek released an open source model that was apparently built at the fraction of the cost, with a fraction of the tokens than OpenAI's ChatGPT model. And the entire AI sort of tech bro community and enthusiast community and all the people that are sort of staying on top of everything happening in the AI space are buzz. And I will get into it a little bit. There's definitely some positives out of this whole thing that I think are worth discussing. But there's also some risks and some dangers and some things that I think people need to be aware of. And I mean, I'll just start with my rant since I'm feeling away about this whole thing. I'm going to ask you, Josh, what happened 30 or 40 years ago when the Chinese people started producing things extremely inexpensively and flooding the U.S. and North American market? What happened? Do you know?
Well, I wasn't around then, but I do know that those things ended up on shelves in North America, and those shelves were emptied into the homes of, families. If you're thinking about like toys specifically, I know we were kind of chit-chatting, like we played with those toys and then they eventually found their way mostly to the landfill, but certainly are still around in pretty much every capacity.
Yeah, and we'll be around for probably 1,000 years until they leach into our environment and destroy Earth. But that's actually not even what I wanted to get at, Josh. What actually happened is we lost almost all American manufacturing and gutted the manufacturing industry. And so, I just kind of want to start with that because I'm really concerned with all of these people who are very, very excited about DeepSeek. And I saw some posts from some people that quite frankly I respected up until now that are like, I canceled my subscription to ChatGPT because I could do all these amazing things and it's free and it's so cheap. And it's like, warning, free and cheap come with a cost. There's nothing free in life, right? And so, obviously there's a whole debate around TikTok and its safety and what, spyware and all this kinds of stuff. And my warning was something like this too, is that yes, it's cheap. Yes, it works well. But like, don't be too quick to jump on the bandwagon just because. Think critically about these things. Think about the long-term impacts. I mean, I'm not even American, Josh, but I feel so patriotic about this particular topic. We need to support our American and North American technology industries, I think, before we just jump willy-nilly over to support the Chinese technology companies. And I think there's reasons to be cautious. So that's my soapbox and my rant on the sort of extremely negative side of this whole debate. But let's kind of like unpack it a little bit more. I wanted to start with that. But obviously, maybe Josh, why don't you give your perspective on, I know before we hit record here, you were kind of giving me a perspective from IBM on kind of open source. And maybe why don't you unpack kind of, first of all, for people's benefit, open source versus closed source, because I don't think we've really talked about that on this podcast. And we can kind of start the discussion from there.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of discourse on this, and I'm not the leading expert. I'm not an expert by any means in terms of like being an open source guy, but I know from some of the perspectives of people that I really respect what they have to say about so far, and I think I just want to share like kind of my perspective on those opinions. So we're a degree or two removed, right? Let's keep that perspective in mind as I go. So open source, what it's always meant for software is this project is being released to the world so everybody can see how it was done for the greater good. And in this case, when we're looking and thinking about AI models, this is not the first open source AI model. This is the first open source AI model that's performing this well and this cheaply and has seemingly been built this efficiently. So it's getting headlines for those reasons. It's open source, which means we can see how it was done. We can replicate it, build with it, utilize it. And that puts pressure on all of the companies that are offering this as a service that we pay for. For example, OpenAI. We pay to use their AI models, pretty significant amounts. And with an open source model that's running much more efficiently, the cost of using their tool is far less. So it does, to your point, drive down the value of something that was the premium. But this isn't new, I'll say, for like AI, especially this space. Like people and experts have been talking since the beginning that we believe that AI will be commoditized. Usage of AI tokens will be free. And to what you said, Peter, free comes at a cost. And what's the cost? I think when you're talking about the like, okay, so what's their agenda behind it? When we think about that, like the answer is not entirely unknown, but mostly fuzzy, right? Like, why would this quant trading company, which is the company that started DeepSeek, like that had a bunch of GPUs, why would they have done it this way? Well, quant quant engineers and computer scientists are used to building laser focused, really efficient pieces of technology and software because that's the game changer in their industry. That is the differentiator. So it kind of, there's like a little bit of logic to like piece together. It's like, okay, they already are used to building software this way. When you go the opposite end of, what OpenAI's approach has been to build their models, they have thrown more money at more compute to make, more like bigger models. But they haven't had the pressure of doing this very efficiently because the money has not been their constraint. The constraint has been power and energy. So that's if we go down that rabbit trail, that's way too technical. So instead of focusing on that, I think the more interesting piece is what's behind the free. Because like even this year with AI, we've experienced in North America all sorts of freebie options. If you go to pretty much any cell phone provider right now, you can get the latest, greatest iPhone, Samsung, Android, you name it phone, they will hand you for free. And they've been doing this for years. They will hand it to you for free if you sign up for the service because it has AI on it. And they've done it for various reasons, but why do they do that? Now we understand that a lot more. It's like a lot more clear and plain, like why they do that. They want our data. All of the cell phone providers sell data to the advertising companies like Facebook, Google, and therefore they want to listen to everything we say. They want to know exactly what we're using our apps and do it on our phones. Like they get all that data already. And I'll segue this to another soapbox I think you have about security and privacy, because when we were chit-chatting as we were gearing up for this conversation, one thing, at least for me, that I always kind of find a little bit funny is like I feel like this two-sided coin of data and privacy. Like if you work in, I'm learning more and more about like Canadian organizations, data and where the servers are located is like a much bigger deal to their government versus in the US. That's not as, it is a priority and focus for some.
Well, it's a
Especially,
priority in the government in the United States, but all the servers are in the United States, so it's like it's a non-issue for you guys, right?
that's probably why it doesn't come up as much, right?
Yeah.
But it does come up in Canada, and it does come up often. Like we've had so many conversations with clients who are asking about, can you guarantee that our servers are going to, this information is going to be stored on servers in Canada? And it's like, well, if that's your constraint, which it has become for many, we have to come up with something more custom than off the shelf, because our OpenAI servers, we know where they are. Our Microsoft servers, we know where they are. So anyways, that's like the beginning of opening a can of worms. But I find it funny because at the same time we have these like security requirements. Everybody still has a smartphone. Everybody still uses the internet. Everybody still is plugged into the grid, and there's no privacy there. So I think it's a little funny personally
It is.
when people
Yeah.
are like pushing me back, and I'm like, they're asking about the server locations, and I ask, like, do you have an iPhone? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, do you use the internet with that iPhone? And they're like, yeah. So I was like, okay, so like all the information about you is already there in someone else's server.
You
Anyways,
know what I
I
ask people,
gave like a
Josh, because they always, you know
misguided
what I ask people, Josh, always is like, because people always talk about, the important meetings at their, or important conversations at their board meetings that need to be private and this and that. And so I say, oh, so you guys all lock your cell phones in a different room before you enter the board meeting? And it's like, no. And it's like, well,
yeah,
what are you talking about, right? So it's definitely a very interesting conversation that requires
yeah.
a lot of challenges, and people need to be thinking more deeply about it. So yeah, it's a can of
Anyway,
worms for sure.
yeah. But I think there's privacy concerns that many people are raising about DeepSeek specifically. Like, and some people are saying the answer is like, oh, run it locally on your computer, which I think there's like definitely like validity there. But for those that are like, I think when we talk about like we introduced this episode and this conversation as the shiny object syndrome. Like, can you share your experience with your companies as you've been focusing lately on getting away from that? Not that you fell into the shiny object syndrome, but like just being super laser focused this year on picking your tools and using them well.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, as you know, we've kind of went down a path. We were going to develop our own kind of, I suppose, custom AI tool, which we were calling Tourism AI Copilot Pro. And first of all, it was, it had some interesting features and it was an interesting concept, an interesting idea. And so the idea was, we would use sort of a third-party tool that we can then plug in all of the different AI models into, and then people could choose the model based on the job they're doing. And, had a whole bunch of bells and whistles and other options that are sort of customizable. And, where it came to a head for me is just the cost. I mean, the cost of the tool itself is not cheap. Then you need a cost of, you need to have a paid account for each of the tools that you're going to kind of plug into with an API. Then you need to pay for token costs. And like the cost itself, like for a company like me, like mine, it was prohibitive. Our vision was to sell it to others. But then I started to reflect on it's hard enough to even get people using ChatGPT on a paid account, never mind some other tool, right? So then I thought, you know what, from a sales perspective, this is actually going to be harder to sell than I first imagined. And it's just actually adding to the complexity of the conversation, right? And so that actually got me reflecting on all of the subscriptions we had because we had subscriptions to, every AI tool, bunch of different things. And, it's like it quickly escalates. And all of a sudden you have, 15 subscriptions at $30 a piece. And man, that gets expensive really fast, right? And then the other thing is that like at the end of the day, it's like one is, 5% better at this and one is maybe 3% better at that. And I don't even know the difference, honestly, like which one's
Yeah.
better at most things. And so it just gets so complicated and so convoluted that at the end of 2024, I just kind of came to a place where I said, I'm not doing any of this. Forget it. And we basically decided we're a Google company, so we decided to really double down on Google because Google, interestingly, in this freemium model kind of thing we're talking about, around the same time, Google announced that they're going to be making Gemini available to the sort of Google customers, Google kind of paying Google customers, and they were going to increase the price of everything for by $2, right? So actually, it became a great deal. And then it was like, okay, so we got rid of our Zoom account, so now we record on Google, and honestly, the transcription tool is way better on Google. It's way slicker internally because it's in our Google Docs already, so it's way
Yeah.
easier to like move those files and everything like that, right? So and we're just and Notebook LM Pro is now apparently going to be available on our Google account, which is amazing. So like, really, I think what's happening is every single one of these providers is sort of trying to become the one tool for all.
Right.
And they're not all there yet. Like, Google definitely isn't there yet. It still has its shortcomings or whatever. So we're also an OpenAI ChatGPT team company. And so really our AI strategy is all in on ChatGPT and learning how to use it to its greatest advantage and learning how to use all the tools as effectively as possible as a team. And then Google is sort of I don't want to say our backup, but as a paying Google company, we're learning how to use Google better. So really, we're down to two tools. We just saved, I don't know, $300 a month on tool costs or more, which is a big deal for a small company like ours, right?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, from a training perspective and getting our team to use AI perspective, it's way simpler, way more basic, right? So, to your point, it's like, yeah, we can get this new shiny thing and this is amazing. And how much time can be spent from my team getting all excited about a new tool that like ultimately we're probably not going to end up adopting anyways, right? So there's a lot of just like red herrings out there in this space, I think. And I think that, companies need to be really thoughtful and mindful. And, I think I told you this story before, Josh, but like when we first decided to sort of pay for ChatGPT as a team, I like agonized over that decision for like 3 months. I was like, oh, somebody's going to come up with a better thing and it's going to be, you know what I mean? And then again, I came to a similar place where I was like, what am I doing? Like, every month that I'm delaying this decision, I'm slowing our progress down on AI adoption as an organization, right? And so it's like I finally made the decision, went all in on it, started creating GPT, started creating policies, and now we're doubling down on it. You know what I mean? And so I think that's to me the message is stop being distracted by these things, pick a tool and like dive in and
Yeah.
go for it. And then, I think you and I obviously we have some new services we're rolling out, which is, these AI intuition sprints and helping people to develop their AI intuition. At the end of the day, I think that if you learn that AI intuition, then you can kind of be tool agnostic, which is even better, right? Because at the end of the day, the tools may have slightly different functionalities, may work slightly different, but but the principles and the concepts are the same no matter what tool you use, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that's actually the bigger key message
Yeah.
is like learn the principles of these tools, and then like really the tool shouldn't matter that much.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's two directions that you can go with that sentiment, right? The tool, if it doesn't matter which tool you use because you developed an intuition, when we say intuition, we mean a skill set that grows over time that should like you progress through, right? Think about we always like compare this to like going to the gym and working out. Like I can't go to the gym for Peter. Peter has to do that for himself and his body. In the same way, AI intuition is I have to learn how to use these tools and build my AI intuition skills because I am the benefactor. And that is based off of a big assumption that we decided on in the past year, which is we're going to focus on, there's a lot of different things you can focus on with AI adoption. Big umbrella AI adoption. There's tech, there's IT, there's information systems, there's machine learning, there's automation, there's the whole gamut. We made a big decision to focus on the people side. And if you go to any of those other categories, they'll say people, product, process, people, product, process. That's like the general, like, and I've been saying this for years. The big shift is we're only focusing on the people part because when you do that first, process comes into it in a natural way, product comes into it in a natural way. But if you start with process and product, you're going the other way and you're then starting at you're shifting the responsibility of whose job it is to make this transition to utilizing AI.
Right.
And if the
Right.
job of as a company we're going to adopt AI and that job becomes the IT teams, well, now you're teeing up a multi-year tech transformation. They're going to be making a big decision like what's our data lake going to be, because a lot of companies haven't done that yet. What sort of information system do we hold? And the more you get into those type of projects, the more you realize they're complex. Statistically, majority of them fail, like 70+%. Like statistically, of IT projects like just don't go anywhere or don't start at all. And so you shift the blame of like whose job is it to make sure adoption happens to some other party that's not really going to be the change agent you need. So the big decision of focusing on people is thinking about AI adoption from that lens, and that lens only is how can we equip people with tools they can use on their day to day so they can use tools that are easily and readily available on the market to get shit done faster and better. And the faster and better is the big thing we focus on. To your point about being platform agnostic, we don't preach that and teach that as like what's your path forward when we coach people through adoption is you should use every tool and be flexible. That's for the practitioners and that's for the nerds. We help people pick one platform, typically it's ChatGPT, and get good with it. And the way we measure that is we ask them very simple questions like, you know, have you used ChatGPT today already when we meet with them? And if they're like, yes, I was doing this, or they're like, great, do you use it every day? Do you use it every week? Or do you use it every month? Do you rarely use it? Just there will help us
Have you
measure
built a
their
custom
intuition.
GPT, right? Have you used the
Right.
project feature, right? Like
They'll show
so
us
many
exactly where
people
they're
aren't
at.
even, yeah.
People show us exactly where they're at on their journey once you start to focus on it at this level. And typically to get there, we have to go through the same process with everyone, which is helping them knock away all those ideas of all the other things they've heard about AI, the IT, the emphasis, the machine learning, etc. Because they are, it's scary when you think about all of that. You're like, I'm not an IT person. I'm not a tech person. I'm not, insert person here. So how am I going to do this? And we just say, we're normal people like you. We're business folk. We're strategists, we're knowledge workers. And here's how we use AI. Here's how you can too. And that's how we have started to see the best results. And even for the past 2 years, we've been speculating the value, like the total value creation that can be done by helping individuals outweighs and is outsizing the total value that can be created by going a tech approach. Now we're doing this based off of not the tech opportunity because the ceiling is much higher, but the reality is if most of those projects don't get off the ground or fail or they are too expensive and over budget, your ROI isn't there. But we can track ROI from day one when we give someone a tool and they save 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
reality is people
that's it,
save two
right?
hours.
And again, to the point of my story, when I was agonizing over which tool to use, and I was started reflecting on every day that I don't make this decision, I'm like losing the ability to make my team more productive. It's like,
Yeah.
make a decision to pick a tool and then, make a decision to train people on how to use that tool. And we literally talked about this in the last podcast, Josh, but if every single one of your people on your team gets 5% more effective or efficient because they use a tool one or two times a day or whatever, that's enough to
Yeah.
justify the tool and to like actually like start to make really important big changes in your organization that are going to have a long-term impact, right? And again, to the point of like, if it becomes an IT project, it's 6, 12, 18 months before you're even there. And then
Right.
again, I'm gonna, my friend Jeremy, who's been on this podcast before, wrote a great book called Geeks with Empathy. And it's really, kind of the problem that IT people have with respect to getting things through with normies, non-IT people, right? And so, he kind of, the whole book is about that, right? It's like, the geeks are the IT people, and like the need for empathy in terms of understanding where people are at, right? And where people
Yeah.
are coming from and their relationship with technology compared to your relationship with technology, right? And like
Yeah.
if you don't get that part right, the technology is going to fail 100% of the time, right? Because it's just like, some geek talking to me about some stuff I don't know, and the blinders come on, and that's the end of the conversation. That's the end of any absorption of any information, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think again, to the point that we're taking, like we're like the normies with empathy, trying to just like meet people where they're at,
Yeah.
and really just like coach them through really carefully and slowly, no matter where they are in their journey, right? And like I think that's a way more effective strategy personally. So I mean, obviously we're biased on this.
Yeah, I mean the main focus is it's leadership, right? Like as you develop leadership skills, communication is always a big part of that, like learning communication skills. And one of the main things you learn when you go through this training is that one of the main communication skills is learning how to convey your ideas in a way that will land.
Right.
Meaning it's my responsibility as the leader to communicate effectively so that whoever I'm talking to understands what I'm saying and not the other way around.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the problems that come from the tech perspective, the IT, the Infosys, solution side is they don't think about it like this. And that's why this concept that Jeremy's written extensively about is so relevant, because AI is a leadership problem more than anything, because we always say it's a people problem. And how do you change people? You lead them, right?
Yeah.
You help them understand. And there's a lot of tactics. There's a lot of ways to go about it. Some people pitch like programs like change management. And when you look at the leadership tactics inside of that, it's like including people from the beginning, getting
Yeah.
their input and feedback,
Yeah.
creating buy-in. And how do you do that? Effectively communicating, helping people understand where we're going, helping them understand that their perspective is valuable. And
Yeah.
so these are the things that we're focused on when we're helping companies and leadership teams get their teams in, because a lot of fallacy that we've seen and a lot of like projects that go bad happen when the leadership team doesn't actually see this as their involved, like their
Yeah.
work too.
Yeah.
Some of our worst projects that we've done over the past few years have involved like basically CEO delegates AI to some middle manager and they're like, go figure out AI for us, whatever
Yeah.
that means. And we work with them, we consult the team, we work with the people, we get like middle management involved, and then middle management doesn't have the authority to then make big business wide holistic decisions, because that's not their job. And then they're reporting back to the executive team, and the executive team has not spent a lick of time in ChatGPT. They don't know what AI can do. They don't know
Yeah.
that you can upload files and that it can create their reports or analyze all this data at once. And all the things that we teach, we help people build their little skills so that their little skills compound and they save time. Like if the executive team who's making decisions about where we go, how do we lead our company, don't understand these things, they don't greenlight path forward. They don't greenlight additional coaching. They don't greenlight, hey, here's an automation project that would complement the efforts of our team, because now we've
Yeah.
uncovered here's 3 or 4 opportunities that would be really good ROI. And therefore, they're not able to make an educated decision, for one part. And two, no one respects like their perspective on this, because everybody understands like they don't know what they're talking about either. So now they're just like making blind decisions, which is also a bad setup.
Yeah.
So
And
we
I want
help
to I want to
companies
maybe share a story, Josh, you and
yeah,
I,
yeah.
in a conversation we had just literally, I don't think last week or whatever it was, with a client, and we were doing. So as a client, we had done some initial AI training with, and I would say that our third training session, which is building your personal productivity system, the president or the founder of the company was there, and we started to notice like a little bit of aha moments with him. He was starting to see like, oh, I understand now how this could really kind of accelerate our business. And
Mm-hmm.
then we went through the phase two, which is the AI vision, mission, core values, kind of the structural kind of part of stuff in terms of how to think about this as an organization. And this particular organization was interesting because the staff aren't all in on AI and they had some pretty
Yeah.
strong opinions and whatever. And what was interesting about that process is number one, from the time the staff did the survey and to the time that we kind of met with them one on one and started talking a little bit more through some of the survey results, how they're feeling or whatever, there's been a shift in the staff in terms of like they're more open to it because they understand it beyond just how they were thinking about it. So that's good. And then we did an intuition, like the beginning of an intuition sprint program, like the step one of the intuition sprint with this client. And it ended up not being an intuition sprint, but it ended up being again this founder sort of understood the concept really quickly. And then basically the meeting became a planning meeting for where we should prioritize in terms of putting his staff through these intuition sprints, what he would like to see as an outcome. So to your point about the leadership sort of understanding it like intuitively and getting it, now and then basically at the end of the conversation he's like, you have a blank slate, you have all the authority, you do what you need to do, work with my team, get this done. And
Yeah.
so it's a completely different, and he said that in front of some people on his team, so like it wasn't just him, him and us, right? So
Right.
it was like sort of we got now the authority we need to like help move this, like really move the needle forward and help him achieve his goals, right? And so to me that was such a demonstration of what we're talking about in terms of like when the leader gets it, how that can start to accelerate things. And when the staff are on side and they're on side or how or where they're not on side, because again, they sent me, one of the staff sent me an email just yesterday actually with some concerns about some things and can you help us? And it wasn't, we don't want to use this, but can you give us some advice and maybe some policy direction on how we should incorporate this in our organization? So really thinking well, I think.
Yeah.
So collectively as a team now they're thinking very thoughtfully about AI adoption as an organization and where there's risks and where there isn't. And that's the conversation that needs to be had, right? Um, they'll get the technology, like we're teaching them the tools and the technology part, right? But the people and culture part is like getting there stronger and stronger and stronger as a team. They're going to come
Mhm.
out of this. And, interestingly, I'm going through the AI adoption framework process with my team internally. And so, especially the middle part. So, we developed AI policies a year ago in absence of this process because the process didn't exist yet. And so, going through the process now, we surveyed our team, we sort of surveyed me and my wife as the leadership group and all this kind of stuff. And, it's been very, I mean, no surprises because obviously we've been talking about this a lot. So we're all in. But, there were some things that my staff raised that were sort of, kind of more just like existential questions about AI and its role in society and all these kinds of things, which are worthwhile for me to understand and know about, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly, here's where they want some training, and here's where they need more support, and here's where they need help, right? So it's just like an informed way to move forward, and like this is going to be a team. This is going to be a team sport in companies, right? And so you need to take a real team approach, but the leaders need to be the captains at the end of the day and informed captains, right? Like you can't be the captain of a football team if you don't know the playbook, right? I guess is the
Right.
way
Yeah, that makes me think of because there's a big shift that we help people take in their mindset that AI isn't happening at you or to you, it is happening through you. And the
yes,
through you piece paired with the focus of like, and it's not all the other stuff, it's you and ChatGPT or your relationship. We tell people this is you and AI, your relationship with AI. So when we hop in and we do our coaching sessions, we always are asking, how's your relationship with AI? And then they tell us where they're at, what's going on. When you start to think about it as my relationship with AI, the whole focal point changes. And that's where we see people go from thinking like, I don't think designers should be using AI. It's like generally what we'll get pushback from the creatives. And we're like, do you think that AI is going to happen at you at some point where like somebody on you're going to get an email that's like, hey, you've been affected because we decided to use an AI tool instead of you now. Like that's where people's minds go because we're
yeah,
human and we start to like no one's stupid. No one's like maybe AI gets good enough, doesn't get good enough, and can't do some of this work. But then the questions people start to ask once they understand, okay, it's happening through me, then I want to be as productive as possible, and I want to be able to steer this in the right direction to maintain the quality of effort that I put forth always. And you're like, once they start to think about that, that's a
yeah,
game changer because they're now thinking about taking ownership of the work. And it's funny enough, like relevant to this topic, just yesterday, the Supreme Court in the US decided like what are the copyright laws going to be going forward for AI usage. And where they landed was very interesting. They said humans using AI to repurpose content is going to be copyrightable,
Yeah.
but AI automation that's just strictly like regurgitated will not be copyrightable.
Yeah.
Um,
I was
and for
happy to
some
see
people,
that
they don't.
actually.
Yeah, it's like fascinating because like I guess then the conversation and the like focal points shifts for this like copyright component to like,
Yeah.
well, what is the line? Is it like I set up an automation to go to your website every time you post a blog and rewrite that blog and post it on my website? Is that is that showing in my initiative because I wrote the prompts, or
No.
and then let it go, or is it like I had to go into every one of those blogs myself, put eyeballs and fingertips on it,
Yeah.
and co-write with the AI, right? Like this is now a much more nuanced, but when you focus on like these specific elements of AI adoption, that's what's relevant to me.
Yeah.
Is it better or risky or safe is what people are asking. Better, risky, safe, faster, like
Yeah.
because those are the things that impact their day to day. On the best side of things, you get more done in a better manner because you are able to add more quality checks, add more context, add more information to the process that you would only either normally have in your head or you just wouldn't have organized and written down. By
Yeah.
going through this organizational process, you as a worker get better because you're more organized. You get more efficient because you create some structure. You
Yeah.
can now relay your ideas to other team members and say, hey, I found a good way of doing this. And when you add a tool into the mix, you're like, and here's when I use the tool. Here's how I use the tool.
That's right.
Right? That's a very normal thing. Like I used to work in
That's
landscaping,
like
for
any
example.
other tool in
It's
technology that
literally
is
like
like
any
that.
other job. Hey, I used to
Yeah.
work in landscaping. We got a different mower. We used to
Yeah.
have red mowers. Now we have yellow mowers. Hey, I figured out the yellow mower can actually cut faster. I can go full throttle because the blades spin fast enough.
Right.
And so the grass looks cleaner and getting it done faster.
Yeah.
And here's how that works. Like, here's what you need to pay attention to now that we're moving a little faster. When you stop, you got to slow down fast. Like, you
Yeah.
got to give yourself a little bit more leeway. Like, these are the things that are very, like, everybody understands that this is exactly what we're dealing with. AI
Yeah.
keeps getting faster, better, cheaper. And so if it's like you're building a toolbox, you've got the tools that you can pull out and use in your workflows. And knowing when to use which tool is really the new thing. That's what you get from experience. And that
Yeah.
experience is where you build intuition. That intuition leads to curiosity. You come up with better creative ideas. These are the things AI will not do for us.
That's
Create
right.
more creative new ideas and new ways to deploy it into work that it doesn't know about. Right.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I'm
and interestingly,
yeah,
the Supreme, I'm glad you mentioned that because
yeah,
the Supreme Court decision in the U.S. actually now aligns copyright law in the United States more with Canadian copyright law. Although Canadian copyright law is interesting because actually our Copyright Act actually doesn't define a natural person
mm,
or something like that. I don't remember the exact specifics, but so it's actually jurisprudence, like court decisions that have sort of like kind of led to the same conclusion in Canada, and the Canadian
yeah,
copyright law is kind of under review, but we have a political crisis going on in Canada, so I don't know when the legislation is going to ever get through the House or whatever, but at some point it will. But generally speaking, that's kind of how the Canadian law looks at it in terms of like AI assisted works, and then it's sort of so, and it's something I actually teach in our intro to AI class because it's like, okay, well, if it means that if it's a AI and a human working together that is okay with respect to copyright, then we need to save our versions. We need to save evidence that we had a human in the loop. You know what I mean? Like, so there's some thoughtfulness that needs to go into, okay, well, what does that mean if I need to apply for like copyright, if I need copyright protection for this works I do? Well, I need to do some certain things to prove that a human
yeah,
was in the loop and that whatever, and policies help with that, version savings helps with that, right? So again, there's implications to all of these things, to your point, right? And it's like similar to your tool thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to use this tool now. Well, there's implications to that, right? Maybe the costs are higher, maybe the fuel is different, maybe the whatever, right? And so there's things you need to know. And again, so I think it all kind of leads to the same kind of conclusion for me, in that like, people need to have kind of thoughtful conversations about all this stuff, and sort of decide kind of what it means for them, right? So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here quickly, Josh, just in the interest of time, because I want to read a LinkedIn post here, just on from a guy named John Munsell. He's a
oh
data
yeah,
strategist, and he wrote a good piece yesterday about open source. So I just want to kind of read it, honestly, just because I think it's a worthwhile read in terms of so he basically said, I recently read a post from someone I respect in the AI industry, someone who understands the risks of deploying AI in enterprise environments. This person had correctly advised that web-based version of DeepSeek R1 was dangerous, but they said something that floored me. I wouldn't trust the web version, but it's perfectly safe installing the open source version on your computer or servers. And then he kind of went through in this post and kind of talked about why that may or may not, it may not be as safe as people think. And so just quickly here, he basically said it's a common misconception that open source software is inherently safe because code is publicly available for review. In reality, open source software is only as safe as the people reviewing it. So again, this is where sort of some policy, some human in the loop, some thoughtfulness needs to go into these things, right? So I'm not saying it's safe or not safe. I'm just saying I'm shocked by how quickly and blindly so many people that are like AI consultants and AI enthusiasts have just like went all in on this thing without having any thoughtfulness, any like ounce of like maybe I should like think. And they're like, spewing this to the whole world. Oh my God, I've like replaced everything and this is my new tool. It's amazing. And it's like, so my number one thing I want to say here is like be careful who you follow in this space and have some critic like I think the whole conversation we're having is like think critically, think organizationally, think about right. And anyways, he kind of talks about there's all kinds of ways that open source can still have dangers. And again, I'm not going to get into the full article, but the point is that we hear things like, oh, it's open source, therefore it's safe, and then 50,000 people repeat that without knowing anything about the act. Like I'm not a tech guy, I'm not a cybersecurity guy. I don't know whether it's true or not, but my gut says I'm not sure, so I'm gonna just take a safer approach, right?
Yeah. Well, I
Right,
mean,
and like right, so that's my point.
yeah, I think the main thing, at least for me, that seems relevant is like there are different layers of people communicating about this stuff online. There's people like us and John. I know John, I've worked with him. He's great. We're in this category of like we help companies figure out what to do about this. Like we have clients, we're working with them. It's our job to filter what we recommend and how we help them, right? Because they don't know, they're trusting us. So we're like middleman. There are people from the source. Like there are executives, technical product leaders, cybersecurity experts who are like in those companies
Yeah,
doing the work at the
yeah,
highest level, at the most like nearest to the source. They are the source levels. And I think it's important, not that everybody like goes to the source, but like that, and especially in moments like this where there's like a viral moment happening, going to the source is super important. Like I would much
mhm,
rather trust, like I rely much heavier on the opinions of those who work. Like I like the perspective of the CEO of IBM. Like, yes, he has a PR team running his account. Yes, it's like, there's a little bit of like marketing behind everything that he's saying. I trust his voice. His voice
yeah,
is valid, like because he's talking to people on his team who are sitting here going through the security parameters, looking at the open source lines, like combing through because they're going to decide, is this going on our platform or not, right?
yeah,
And there's many others. There's product leaders at OpenAI that it's like when news starts to come out, who do I trust? Do I trust the person who's like in my same category of reading the newsline headlines from some other influencer type person or PR or marketing, or going to the source? And I think that's generally like been one of the simple ways that we like test the mettle of like other practitioners in the space. This is very similar to like the marketing agency world over the past 20 years. Like, how do you know if an agency is a good agency? Well, they create results for their company. They actually follow best practices. They have
they work
certificates.
with reputable companies, they have
Right.
probably reputable people giving them testimonials, right? Like
Yeah,
there's yeah, yeah,
absolutely. Like, and I think the point in saying this is like, it's easy to reach to like even just like going to Silicon Valley and finding founders. Like last year, I spent a lot of time with founders who had launched AI products, and we were talking about partnerships, or we were talking about helping roll out their tools or be beta testers. And I got to work with a number of companies like this, talking to the founding teams, and it's like those guys are on the bleeding edge of this stuff, but they're also kind of in the same category of like they're not the industry leaders. They're just
mhm,
they're like research labs trying
mhm,
something new to see if it sticks, right? And I think this whole thing is like when you add up Silicon Valley companies and startups generally in the AI space, you've got the big AI providers and labs, you've got industry people who are consultants. There's a lot of noise, and that is what we often hear is like the most overwhelming part of this for the people that are trying to build an AI intuition. Like, who do we listen to? And it's like, well, you could become a practitioner of learning about what other people are saying with this stuff, or you could get to work and understand it for yourself. And that's really where we try to focus people in on is like, if you spend your first 10 hours with ChatGPT, you will know more than any of the marketing PR gurus out there about it. Like, you will know more than majority of the people who are writing LinkedIn or, videos, because they're just like talking about the news lines. And it's kind of a call. I don't know, like, we work with plenty of smart colleagues who are kind of in this category of like, they know a lot about what's going on, but they may not be the ones in the work. And it's something we always encourage, like, be in the work, like, do the work, spend the time, build your muscles so that you can speak confidently about things you know about. And
be in a place where you can make your own decisions with like because you've thought about it and because you've
right.
put some effort. And again, that's where the whole process that we're talking about with respect to having these conversations in your company and as a leadership team and with your staff, it's like have some informed conversations,
Yeah.
right? And like make informed decisions, like think critically. I'm so in a place right now about like the lack of critical thinking in the world. I'm back on my soapbox, Josh, but it's so bad. And I'm 100% with you. And like, by the way, when I do my keynote presentations at conferences and other places, I walk through a bunch of quotes and a bunch of things that Sam Altman said, Jan LeCun said, right? Like I basically, my entire presentation is a series of things that the source, the people that are actually at the forefront developing this technology are saying. And often it's like, even they're not agreeing on these things, right? So it's like, that's my whole point of the way I present it. It's like, even they don't agree. And so like, start like paying attention and thinking critically at the end of the day, right? That's what it
Yeah,
comes down
exactly.
to. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So sorry, I kind of interrupted you there. I'm gonna leave it with one more little soapbox item here. But one of my really good friends, he spent a bunch of time in the Alberta government and specifically working kind of with the Chinese governments and Chinese companies on energy related matters. And very, very smart guy, very in the know in terms of like geopolitical stuff when it comes to all of this kind of stuff. And that was on the energy file, never mind the technology file. But he would his famous thing that he would always say is, the Chinese are playing chess while Canadians are playing checkers. And my final word here is don't be a pawn. Even if you're playing chess, don't be a pawn, right? And think critically and ask questions and don't just jump on bandwagons because I think there's a lot of geopolitical pressures going on right now. And I don't know, I for one would like to see America win. So that's kind of where I'm at because even though I'm not American, I'm North American, and so that's my soapbox. Let's put America first. Let's put North America first. Let's make sure we win this thing because I think that the risks on the other side are, I'm going to just be honest. They've proven not to necessarily have the same values as us when it comes to these kinds of things. And, like it or not, they have dictatorships or whatever, or dynasties or whatever you call them. And they have the ability to think 300 years in advance while we were thinking like a quarter at a time and a 4-year election cycle at a time, which actually makes it a lot harder for us. So just think critically. So that's my political soapbox for the day.
I have a one simple to do if you're one of our Canadian fellows and you're rooting for America. You could introduce and start practicing using freedom units in your day to day. Cups, half cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, inches, and feet and miles.
Nice.
Just to get a taste, right?
I like it. That's awesome. Nice. All right. Well, so I mean, I think in conclusion, Josh, don't just jump on the next shiny object when it comes to AI. I think pick a tool, preferably a tool made by an American company or a North American company, and get really good at it and learn how to get the most out of that tool. Think critically and keep calm and carry on. Don't jump on the bandwagons and get too excited about stuff that probably is going to fade away in the next couple weeks, anyways. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Tourism AI podcast. To learn more about the network or get involved, visit our website at tourismainetwork.com or find us on socials at Tourism AI Network. We'll see you there.